done for me lately? It's Coons. What have y'all done for us lately? And if there's no answer, the only thing we owe them.
Hey, good evening. Welcome to Let's Talk 2. And tonight we're going to get back to our, I would say, regular programming every Tuesday night. We have Sister Azima with us, and she's here to give us some of her wisdom, knowledge, and seasoned experience of life, living as a melanated human being in America. Sister Azima, what's going on?
It's been a lot going on to begin with. Uh, Forgive me because I got my bonnet on.
Uh,
Usually,
well, well,
well,
you
hold on.
you have your bond on. I've missed you the last couple of weeks. We both had a couple things going on with
Right,
this
we have some
this
things out.
wicked weather, and I know we're expecting some interesting weather the next few days.
Yeah,
And
tomorrow. Well, tonight for us, it's supposed to be coming in some other storms or whatever.
yeah,
And we're in the Midwest, and for us, tornadoes weren't supposed to appear until May or June.
and
Mhm.
and and I've been meaning to call you on the weekends, particularly Sunday,
Mhm.
because for those that don't know, Sister Azima is an herbalist, and she does do. Explain your herbalist, your business, what you do, and what you recommend and your services.
Well, what I'm able to do is to help people purchase products that have already been produced, the right types of products that don't carry any GMOs or anything like that. And you're able to get them at the cost, over the counter cost. Um, and what I'm doing is helping you bring, we always talk about harmony. We're trying to bring your physical body into its harmonic balance. That's the whole purpose of your living. You got to come to that place of balance. And whenever you're out of balance, most people think that they can go and get medicine. Well, medicine does just that. It medicates the problem. So when you have a headache, the aspirin, Advils that you take, it doesn't stop the headache. It shuts off the pain center. You still have the headache. You haven't addressed what's causing the headache. You have just cut off the pain centers. And that's what most medication does. And so
Mhm.
with herbs, the herbs don't cut off the pain. What it does is that it helps the body find a way to mitigate the problem. And it doesn't happen overnight because people are looking for instant results. Medication will do that because it shuts off nerve endings. And then you have an immediate result, but you don't stop having the problem. The purpose of herbs is that it corrects the problems. And I always tell people you're going to start out with the herb, you're not going to see a result. At the end of 30 days, you're going to begin to feel better. At the end of 90 days, you will absolutely see a change. The body can go back to healing because now it has 90 days of the amino acids or nutrients that they need. And herbs can provide that with you. Also, herbs are what you eat. So you have to be sure, your cilantro, your black pepper, white pepper, your paprika, certain chili powders, your ginger, all of these are part of the herb family. Herbs just mean things that grow from the ground.
Okay.
Okay. The strongest bull doesn't eat meat, it eats from the ground. So it eats the grass and all the shrubs. Your cows do the same thing. Your chickens will eat other animals as well as bugs and stuff. They don't have teeth, so they can chew rocks and put them in there, and the rocks help mash up. So if you don't know how your food system works, then you are out of sync because you don't have the knowledge. And that was on purpose. It was driven by the fact that everybody needed to lobby Congress in order to get things done. So when you had a lot of people with cattle, when they couldn't grow any grain, they went to cattle. And you had all these people getting money from the government to raise cattle. The cattle can be detrimental to the land if you have an overabundance of cattle. And if you don't allow the cattle to graze, they're like buffaloes. They graze. They're grazers, so they have to go where the grass or shrubs are. And so the whole purpose of the herbs is to allow your body to come back to its neutral point, its balanced place. And that's what herbs do. And they help with things like arthritis and liver issues, heart issues, hypertension, blood pressure, your B vitamins. People go like B complex. Well, choline and inositol is a B vitamin. Okay. There are water soluble vitamins, which means every time I speak or cry or perspire or cough or sneeze, I am eliminating a portion of that vitamin. And that's usually most of your B vitamins. Then you have fat soluble vitamins. All of this is your herbs, which you have to learn. And those vitamins can only be reduced through the fatty things that you have in your body. Your liver contains the fatty, your gallbladder, okay, the bile from the gallbladder, it helps break down these types of things. And then there are amino acids. What the herbs do is allow your body to get the building blocks it needs, the amino acids, the minerals that it needs, and then the vital minerals. Okay. And there are like a dozen vital minerals, and then there's minerals, and then there's amino acids. And so I can really talk to people. And what I do is, because I do have a background in medicine, I am asking people to usually give me their my chart, and I can go through that chart because if it comes onto my computer, which has encryption on it, so other people can't break in and get this information, and you're giving me permission, I can look at all the blood stuff and tell you what's going on in your blood, and then suggest the things that you need to help clean the blood. Every 6 weeks, your body does replace the blood. It replaces everything in your body within a year. So that's what I do. I give people consultations, usually about an hour, hour and a half, and we're able to go through what we need to go through, get you started on a routine. And then I usually check back with you to see where you're going at that time, because people will add stuff. The doctor will give you a pill and you'll be like, oh, that's good, I'm going to take 12 of them. No, just no. The herbs are the same way. No, because some of them can be interactive with what you're doing. And if you're a smoker, it can have, or if you drink, it can have an adverse effect. So that's it in a nutshell.
Okay.
So, and I love what I do, because to me it's all science and engineering, and it allows me to work with the periodic table, with the human body, to interact with people, to know how they're feeling, and to be able to help them self-diagnose, which we do anyway. You wake up and you're not feeling good. I know it's my sinuses. Oh, I know it's my back. But what we are able to do, or do the things that the body can heal, and then get you to a point that if you have to have surgery, or you have to have what we call invasive, where they are invading your body to do some type of a procedure, that your body will be able to heal from it more rapidly.
Yes.
And not deteriorate. Mm-hmm.
So I called you earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and let me just let everybody in the chat know is that usually I will call Sister Azima, and she'll give me some thoughts that we would talk about, definitely, because we haven't been able to do a show. I think it's been almost a month. And
Yeah. Yeah.
when I called earlier, you gave me the response that I wasn't expecting. Not that I know you don't care, but your response was like, it reminded me of when an elder tells people they're going down the wrong road.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
Lord, yeah.
so I asked you what was going on, and you said, um, you said, I don't know about uh, us black people. So I titled the show in reference to that because
Mhm.
you never say the word black. Usually you're always the person that always says melanated folk in America.
Mhm.
So I titled the show "Coming to Terms of Reality."
Mhm.
So if you don't mind, with Sister Azima,
Mhm.
share with me and share
Mhm.
with the chat what is on your mind, with what you see with anything that's going on, and what us quote unquote younger people need to really be paying attention to, and with going back to our original shows with knowing thyself, and really being aware of everything that's going on, how it affects us, how it may not affect us, and just being, and I hate to use this word because a lot of people are using this phrase, emotional intelligent, just to be aware of what's going on.
Well, that's an oxymoron. Emotions doesn't have intelligence.
Hmm.
They are reactive, and that's a good thing. They're fluid. They're reactive. They are a frequency that vibrates, and that's what makes you emote, act out. That's what emote means. It means to act out what is what you're feeling internally. Okay. Um, the reason I said that to you is because I'm looking at a lot of things, and even within my family, I love my family dearly, but we are on two different wavelengths at the moment. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with it because overall we walk the same path. But right now we are divided by a river or a tree or some type of walkway because we have to have our own personal journey. And that's where we are right now. Instead
Hmm.
of having a collective journey of being held down by religious tenets, a lot of us are literally taking the opportunity to, and I'm going to be ironic, smell the roses. And once we smell the roses, we come to a realization that, hmm, those flowers over there don't smell as good as I thought they should. Let me go over here. And we are exercising our right to intellectual consciousness, coming to a place of understanding you, what makes you work, what makes you tick, what are the values that you set for yourself. Unfortunately, there are those of our people who are so victimized because they're looking for a savior, someone to come and save them, that they're willing to not hear anyone else's viewpoint other than what we're looking at. Now,
Mm.
now I'm going to walk backwards in politics. When Trump was president and people said a lot of things, I'm going to walk you back. Trump was asked to run for the presidency. When he was on the Oprah show and he was on a lot of other talk shows, and everybody asked him when he was a much younger man, you have plans? He said no. He said, I'm a businessman. I don't want to do that. Running for president literally was not beneficial to him. He did not take a salary in his first term, and he's not taking a salary now. That money is donated to some type of charity. And he picks a different charity every time, or he has someone in his cabinet. He would ask people, who do you think really needs this money? And he would donate. You never heard anybody say anything about that. Just like no one ever said anything about the fact that John Kennedy and his family didn't take a salary while they were in office. Okay, Ronald Reagan didn't do that either. So you have some presidents that didn't, because they could fund their own campaign and they didn't think it was correct to take that full salary. And so Trump was one of those people that didn't. When Trump was running, he did not have a cabinet in mind. He didn't even have a vice president. Think about that now. You never saw him run with Mike Pence. Never. Okay. The cabinet that he acquired was the one that was in office, that was given to him by Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and all of those. Okay. These people are all part of that elite group that felt it was their place to control the world. All right. So they set up systems, they put systems into place. And Trump, he had a hard time. If you remember when he came into office and he realized he needed some people around him, he went to his business partners. He brought in about, I know definitely the My Pillow man and another guy that did international trade. He brought in like 5 or 6 different friends of his. And the government, the IRS and the government really went after those men. And they had to step down and tell him, I can't support you, man, because I can't risk losing everything I have. He said he understood. But the only person that really didn't back down was the My Pillow man, because he had other means of taking care of his staff and whatever. But that did not deter them from boycotting his business, talking bad about his pillow, doing a lot of underhanded stuff. And the guy had to go to court, and they brought him up on all kinds of tax evasion, a lot of stuff that was going on. But he made it, and he was able to survive it. And it solidified a better bond. That's why this time everybody's thinking Trump is so mean. You know, the old saying, you know, hurt me once, shame on you, hurt me twice, shame on me. Well, Trump got that. He listened to that statement. Hurt me once, shame on you. Hurt me twice, shame on me. So that's why he came very prepared this time. That's why he went out and got all 50 some odd people, 56, I think, people for his cabinet. And he did everything. Uh, he has homosexual people in there. He has POCs, people of color. He's got black folks in there. You know, and I have to distinguish because you know, Kamala's a POC, but she's not a black American. Okay. So you have all of that. And what is happening is that now many of our young adults, and to me, anyone 60 and under is a young adult to me. You're getting a chance to really make some true decisions. And I think when the Democratic Party came after him real ghetto-like and put him on trumped up charges, just made stuff up, you know, just made it up, that he had a chance to really walk in the shoes of Black Americans, indigenous people that are Black in America. And it gave him a whole new perspective on what we have to deal with because of the corruption. And then you can see how deep the corruption goes and how they used certain things. Before Kennedy was killed, he had put through an executive order, he had given us some means of funding certain things that they wanted. Now don't get me wrong. Kennedy was about propaganda. He wanted America and democracy to look a certain way. So he created entities. And they're not government agencies. That's the sad part. They are not literally a part of the established government agencies, but they receive government funding through an executive order. So the United States Aid, which is the Agency on International Development, their whole role was to create propaganda in other countries. Now, you can do that propaganda through feeding people. You can do it through dropping leaflets that has money, their money attached to it. You can do it through eliminating certain state, heads of states. You could do it through various means, but nonetheless, the overall propaganda you want is that democracy from America is the way you want to be. When Black people traveled during that time, the world looked at us differently. They looked at us like, wow, we didn't know you were having it that hard. Wow, we didn't know all of those things. Wow, we stand with you. As I remember, my first husband and some other guys I knew from Vietnam used to tell me how the Vietnamese would catch them and say, "This ain't your war, Black man.
Mm.
Pay attention, this ain't your war. Be quiet and fight with us." Or they would pop up behind many of the white soldiers and kill them. So what did America do? They redeployed the Black people. They would send them back 3 times, where they may send white people back twice. They wanted you to die. Being sent back creates shell shock. You have no idea what war does to a person. When these Black men came back home, remember now, they're only 18. Many of us have put our children into college because going to school, you could be exempt. They changed that exemption because they wanted to get rid of you. And so what I'm seeing now, I flash back to all of that to now, because there was a time we became lost. We weren't attending church. We weren't doing a lot of things, because I think that's when we realized the system itself had become so internally corrupt that they put a target on our back. It didn't matter what we did. So, when I hear things like affirmative action and DEI and, civil rights, I graduated from high school in '69. Civil rights only started in the '60s. There was no affirmative action when I started working for NASA. I started working for NASA in the '70s. I stopped working for them in the 1990s. I'd already been there 20 years. There was no DEI for me. There was no affirmative action. But I can tell you this, the Black community made sure that every child could read, could write, could do math. Those of us that stood out, the teachers would really work with you. There was no kindergarten through 6th grade in one school and then middle school. You went kindergarten through the 8th grade, then you went to high school. There was no separating you. The older children looked out for you on the playgrounds with the younger children, so they wouldn't have the middle-aged children hurting the younger children. There was a sense of community, and then we worked together. If you didn't understand that problem, so and so would help you, or you would get help from somebody. There was not this need for you to be labeled. We didn't label kids. We didn't go ADHD. We didn't go autistic. And we grew up with children that had physical limitations and mental limitations. But I mean, kids could be cruel, but the overall thought, it was not something that was labeled. They didn't label it and then separate you out. You had a chance to work with people. And we also understood that everybody wasn't going to go to college for higher learning. So you always had trades. Even the people who which I would consider now marginal, they could still learn a trade, and still feed their families and feel useful to society. And I think now many of our young adults are looking at this like, oh yeah, I don't have to be that way. And I pride myself on the fact that so many Black men, athletes who were in sports, whether it's basketball or football, we do have Black people in hockey, whatever the sport was, including golf and tennis, They found a way to not allow their managers, because in the very beginning, many of the managers were white managers managing many of the black athletes. So they would only put them into environments where they can only see white females, only have white banks, and they really couldn't have access to any of their money unless their agent or lawyer said, hey, Frank or Bill or whatever the person name, so and so's coming to get a certain amount of money. You know, we have now, those athletes have raised their children to say, you can be an athlete, but give yourself 5 to 7 years. Then you need to get out of the business. Have something else. And so many of those young men who went to college on an athletic scholarship did their part. Many of them didn't get picked in a draft, but they became doctors or lawyers or news reporters, or they became mechanics, or the scientists or engineers. And when you have that broad scope, but you still have your black politicians only giving you this very narrow viewpoint of being poor and downtrodden and always in the bad neighborhood and you can't do well, you all can see through that. And I am very proud of that. Okay. And I always tell you that my grandfather was a slave, but he never imparted on us, he never imprinted that life on us. My father and mother grew up doing Jim Crow and the lynch laws. Okay. I remember when Emmett Till was killed. I remember seeing that open casket. I remember crying because I had never seen anything that horrifying in my life. But it was never meant to be imprinted on us to limit us. And so we don't limit ourselves. Okay. I am angry with these politicians who say, okay, I told my children we're not going to celebrate. No, here's what I told them. I said, we're going to celebrate, Black History Month, but Black history for you is American history, and it's every day. It's every single day. Okay. My father made the paper bag machine that you see now, whether it's a plastic bag or a paper bag. My father invented that. I can now tell you that there are so many inventions. We know the stoplight, the gas mask. We know that the fire hydrant. We can look at open heart surgery. We can look at blood banking. We can look at the caterpillar. There was a Black woman that developed a process for the cantilevered arm that we see on the caterpillar. She developed that because she hired many of the men to work at the docks. She didn't want them to get hurt. There's just so much that's out here, and now it's spilling over. It's coming out, and it's coming out like smoke coming out of a chimney. You can smell the goodness in it, the way the food smells. You get a chance to look at that, and it makes me happy. And then we turn around and we see the people like Don Lemon and Joy Reid and Roland Martin, and now this young woman, Jasmine Crockett, how they feel it's very important to gaslight you. And I find that to be insulting. Okay. Now,
you said a lot there,
I
and I
find that
and I really really want to unpack everything you just said because let me see. Let's rewind my thought
okay.
process because you just definitely gave us something to really really discuss. Let me ask you
Mhm,
first and foremost of an elder.
mhm.
Do you think integration was the best thing for Black Americans?
I think it served its purpose.
What do you mean?
It served its purpose because um, how else would you know what your enemy is like if you're not around your enemy? If you shelter everything and you never get a chance to know your enemy, how can you prepare? How can you cook if all you ever do is read the recipe book, but you never practice? So integration forced us to look at ourselves, to go within, look at ourselves and go like, well, I can't get it this way. I'm going to get it this way. And we learned how to think around things, how to outdo you, how to be better than the cumulative. And I'm going to tell you that the established oligarchy looked at that and went, we need to have some Black people in there to keep them from superseding us. Because I always tell Black people, if your vote didn't matter, they would not encourage you to go out and vote. They wouldn't throw Barack Obama in your face. They wouldn't throw Kamala Harris in your face. Okay. They would never tell you it's important to go and vote for any particular person. Okay. Because they know, they know that it requires you. Come on now. Walk backwards. Black Panthers. You wouldn't have school lunches. When I went to school, there was no such thing as a breakfast program or a school lunch. You had a cafeteria. It cooked food, but you had to pay. I think you had to pay a nickel a day when I was there. A nickel at the time that my parents were coming, that's a lot of money. But the Black Panthers introduced it, and they went to the churches and asked the churches to donate the money. The churches said, we can't donate money, we can donate food. So they began to create food banks through the Black Panthers. Okay. That is where you got kindergarten. Kindergarten was already established in other countries, but how it was over here, there was no kindergarten kindergarten was introduced to me when I was young. It didn't exist during my mother's time frame. Okay. Or even my brother and sister who were 10 years older than me, 10 or 12 years older than me. I was a middle child. So that didn't exist. So you went to school basically at first grade. And that's where you learned everything, how to read, how to write. You had phonics. Phonics was very important. It teaches you how to enunciate words. But not only that, it teaches you to break the word down by sound. And now you can spell it.
That's right in your wheelhouse anyway, right there.
And they removed all of the things that was necessary for learning. If you go back and study Europe in the 1800s, you'd look at that and go like, damn, that's horrible. Their life in Europe in the 1800s, 1700s, 1600s, it was horrible. Horrible. You think because that guy got that stovepipe hat on his head, that was to keep the shit from falling down on his head. And I mean that. The people would eliminate and defecate in a jar. And then because there were no alleys, no sewers, they would throw it out onto the street. So the man with the top hat walked on the inside so that the female on the outside of him would not have manure thrown onto her. It would hit the top of the hat and go down onto his brim, and he can take his hat off and shake it off. Think about that. Men wore heels so they would not be stepping in manure because they walked on the inside near the inner part of the building where everything was thrown out from the upper floors. The women didn't have heels. And it also made a man taller because a lot of white men were not tall. So the taller the heel, the taller the man, the more prestigious he was. He wore a purse because he didn't have pockets. Women had pockets and bustles. So you have to go back and look at history, white people's history, and you'll go like, woo, things weren't that bad. We were already brought up knowing that you do not defecate in the place where you eat and sleep. So we either had outhouses or we had a facility next to your house that you could walk, put your shoes on, walk outside, use it, and come back in. Because we understood that. We understood that. That is how you stay healthy. That's how you stay clean. And we also understood that you want to dump all of your waste in a particular area. And then you put all of the plant matter on top of your waste. And you would turn it over, and then you would throw lime on top of it and burn it to burn down and kill the bacteria, because the lime leaches into the soil and creates an action like chlorine or ammonia and begins to break the soil down and remove harmful bacteria, but leaving behind good bacteria. And then in 3 years, you burn it again. You can use that as soil to start growing your food out of it. But we understood that. So right now, I'm proud of my people because they're coming to a place of what I call spiritual consciousness, spiritual intelligence, conscious intelligence, and they're making better choices. They're not being, we do get gaslight lit every day, but they're not running from stuff. We question everything that we see now. And I think that's what we have to do. Okay. By no means, I'm a Trump supporter, but I support Trump because he speaks to some of the things I want to see done. I am not a Democrat or a Republican or an independent. And in Missouri, I told them that when I went to vote. So now they just give me a blank a ballot, and I can vote as I see fit. And when I went in there, so many Black people were doing the same thing. Just give me an open ballot, and they could vote however they wish, because I vote on issues, things that directly impact me. I don't vote because you share the color of my skin. You don't do anything for me.
Mm. Well,
Okay.
let me ask you, right? And you bring up a very interesting point in knowing not just their history, but knowing our history and being being that we are getting not far removed from our history of the struggle of what we consider the civil rights movement, and understanding that bridge that may have not really been crossed from then till now, or not really understood. Definitely with this generation, you said you feel like you're proud that this generation is starting to be more aware of their personal circumstances than the circumstances as a whole.
Hmm.
Was it so easily to gaslight our people in the 60s, in the 70s, as it is now?
Yes, it was much easier. Why? Because many of them, salvation was the church. Many of the preachers stood between, especially since Missouri was considered the South, especially in the southern states. They stood between the plantation owner and their slaves. The plantation owner would give the pastor a little leeway because he was reading from the Bible and the teachings of Jesus. But they also instituted a slave Bible that required the pastor to tell them they must be beholding to their master in the same manner you behold to Jesus. And so when their children grew up, the Black people who were still hanging on to their indigenous voodoo teachings or hoodoo teachings or Oledamir or Legba or things of that nature. And they would tell them, we identify with this because you have a central character. But that central character, we're going to call them Legba or Oledamir or just me, all of these names that you brought from your home world, your tribe, your nation here, you would teach it to your children. But when you got into the bigger church, the only time you had to yourself was Sunday, was the bigger church. Then you would call out to Jesus. Over time, when the elders died, the teaching died. But the core of you being able to go to the church and call upon Jesus to save you stuck around. When the 60s came and we realized things were not getting better, we felt that they were moving in a direction we didn't like. Many of us stood up and stepped out and spoke about that. That's also a time when our people became very color struck. And that's when all these books showed up, an octroon, 1/8 white, you know, polytroons. I was like, oh my goodness. And there are books out there, The Color of Men. Okay. When you get that, it's a 4-volume series. When you read it, I mean, it was a hard read for me. My husband loved it because, my husband he was darker than you, Quentin. Okay. He was very, very dark. I loved it. But he began to tell me that I would be considered a mulatto. My sister would be considered a polychrome. My sister's, you know, on her license, she's white.
Mm.
Same family, same mother, same father. She's considered white. I had twin brothers. One of my brothers looked exactly like my sister. The other one looks exactly like me. He and I would be considered mulatto. That other twin and my sister would be considered polychromes. They would be considered white. My oldest brother, they thought he was Arab. you know, so I laugh because that is who we are. Okay. Our diversity, and then I didn't know until I started working. After I left NASA, started working for Red Cross, I learned a lot of things. That the older a Black person is, the harder it is to pull bone marrow from them and pull down what you're looking for.
Mm.
Because our bone marrow contains everybody. So they don't like to take bone marrow so much from Black people because they can't pull out a specific gene pattern or something because we carry all the gene patterns. And, I was going to donate because I donate blood, I donate plasma. And when I donate plasma, they get so excited. Oh my God, your plasma count is very high. And I would donate a lot of plasma. And that's not uncommon for us. When we're healthy, you donate plasma, it's a very high plasma count. And when white people come to that high level, that's something unique. But for us, it's not. And so it wasn't until the lady, she used to work with me at Red Cross, and then she went over and started working in the bone marrow industry. And she told me, she said, Catherine, I love the fact you got all of that, but you can't come and donate any bone marrow because your bone marrow contains everybody's. Once you reach age 50, they can only pick up bone marrow from every group of people in the world because all people stem from us.
Mm.
They can't break it down. Usually when you're younger, they can break it down and go like, well, we're pulling out this type of stem cell or this type of whatever. And they're able to do that and put it with that person. But she told me once you hit 60, she said, it's over. She said, we take it from, white people who are 60, but you get to be 60 and it's like, how are we going to break this down? How are we going to be able to inject them?
Well, you brought her up, and you brought up a couple people earlier.
Jasmine Wright.
And let me let the chat know.
Okay.
That Jasmine Crockett is from
St. Louis.
St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're from?
I'm from St. Louis.
And
she attended a Catholic school, high-ranking Catholic school, cost $38,000 a semester. And then she went to a high-ranking university. And she ain't never been down in the ghetto. That's not where she from.
What is your thoughts about Jasmine Crockett and some of the stuff? And I know it may be a lot of political differences, but you mentioned her in reference to being an agent of gaslighting Black Americans.
She isn't. I put her in the same category as Oprah, Gail, Joyce Reed, Don Lemon, Roly Poly Martin, because you, if you listen to them, when you really agitate, when we agitate them as a collective nation of people, you're going to hear them say things, and they're speaking deeply from their heart. I've heard Roland say, "You Black people don't know what's good for you. That's why there are people like me to speak on your behalf." Mm. Well, just think about it. Miss Crockett said, Trump ain't gonna give nobody that $5,000. What are you all gonna do with it? What can Black people do with $5,000? And I thought, hmm. But they are where they need to be. They support the Democratic Party. Now, remember, the Democrats are the ones that gave the Dixiecrats, 'cause that's who they are. They gave you the Ku Klux Klan. They introduced it. They supported it. They gave you riding in the back of the bus. They were strong proponents of Willie Lynch laws, Jim Crow laws. They Missouri had blue code laws.
Explain that.
These are laws that prevent you from doing certain things in what they consider sundown states. And we were a sundown state. And you be indoors when the sun go down.
So let me ask you, and please excuse me for my ignorance. She knows. Would you be some? Would you say? Excuse me. Would you say that she's someone who knows the history of Black Americans in coming from that area? She knows historically what our people have been through and clearly understands what she's saying and what she's doing, or
They
she's
don't
just doing.
no public school system is going to teach you Black history. They skirt around it, dance around it. And what they do teach is just the slave period. They do not walk backwards and teach you anything about what was going on the continent of Africa. They don't walk back and tell you that Europa was named after a Black woman. They don't walk back and tell you that the descendants of Akhenaten's children are the reason you have places like England, Wales, and all of that. They don't talk about that. The Franks were Black. And unless you go back and do your own historical research, you're not going to know. However, when you go over into Europe, they start talking about it a lot, and you learn a lot. And then you come back to America and you gaslit all the time. There, um, William Clay was our first true representative that Black people in St. Louis voted into office. And I remember how we had to do some slick maneuvering because my father was a politician. He was also a union rep, and he knew how to do certain things. And I have to laugh because my father was over the textile workers union. That was the second largest union in America. But he was the only Black president of that union. And St. Louis had a very large textile union, and he was the Black president of that union. Okay. The only Black president. And he was president 25 years. But he was able, because he was fair, and that's one thing we have always been. We have always been fair. We've always been, that there was a slogan called, I forgot who used to say it, but it was one news program that would say, we are fair and balanced news. And my dad was that. He was fair and balanced. And Black people here in St. Louis knew how to be fair and balanced. That's the only way you could be when you wanted to get stuff done. So there are certain things that Miss Crockett was able to learn in school And I'm sure she learned a lot from her family. But if she's being true to her dedication of the Democratic Party, then she is going to stand 10 toes down on ignorant information. And that's the
Hmm.
sad part. Okay. And I laughed today. I have many daughters. One of my daughters, she's married and has a son. But her birthday, my son-in-law's birthday, and my grandson's birthday is all in the month of March. And so instead of sending three separate stuff, I sent one card and money, and the card was signed by all the family members, telling them, go get yourself some Chipotle because I know they like Chipotle. Okay. And we were talking because she called and said, Mom, thanks for the card, blah, blah, blah. And, we were talking. I have a sister who lives in Chicago, Illinois, and Illinois is a sanctuary state, but a lot of unusual things have been happening to her. My sister is in her 80s, so I'm concerned. Okay. Um, Things that she's never been faced with before. So, and I was talking to my daughter and I was saying, call her, da da da. Make a long story short, I said, she's in a sanctuary state and we know the illegal aliens are there. And my daughter blew up because she believes everything the Democratic Party tells her. Okay. You can't have democracy because democracy breeds capitalism. And there's nothing wrong with capitalism when it's done right because it moves a country forward. Okay. But a democracy that believes in fascism or Maoism or communism is dangerous because they believe in total control. And so when she was defending her position, I told her, I said, you must go out and read. Because she got quiet. I said, go and read how these people got into this country. I said, dear daughter, you cannot cross into Canada. Everybody thinks that it's just the southern border that they're protecting in the United States. No, you can't cross into Canada where America hits Canada. There is a 20-mile wide stretch of land where there's no trees, no grass. They can see you. And then there's something that divides it. I want to say a fence that divides it. Go over that fence. Canada has laws. After they get through doing what they're going to do to you in Canada, they might release you to America. And I told her, I said, you can't do that. I said, you can't come into a country illegally. Oh, Mom, that's not true. And then when I presented that scenario to her, I said, get on a plane and go to Germany and see if you can stay in Germany after your visa's over. In Germany, they arrest Americans. And in Poland, what did the man from Poland say? He says, we shoot people. No questions. You don't have a visa and you're in Poland? We shoot you. We shoot you to kill you, not to maim you. So every country has its borders and every country has their rules. But the gaslighting from the Democratic Party has everybody thinking, we're free and open, come here and do what you're going to do. And that's not true. That's not true. Everybody is not amenable to Black people coming to their country. So I have to tell my own family, stop, drop, and take a breath. And let's look at this realistically. Just because Canada is your neighbor, it doesn't mean you can just cross the border and enter into Canada. You've got to have declaration. If you don't have a passport, you must have your birth certificate to travel into Canada. Even if you're just going over there to go to the ice cream shop. I lived in Portland, Oregon. If I wanted to go to Canada, I had to have my birth certificate. I didn't have a passport, so I had to use my birth certificate. That's Canada. Canada's right there. You can't just go. And so I have to tell Black folks who are just hung up on democracy, You just can't go into any country. Go to Haiti and see what happens. Go to Puerto Rico. Go to Cuba. Go to Jamaica. See what happens.
Mm.
And we have Black people who live all over the world. And a lot of them become expatriates from America because if they consider you to be an American, you still got to pay taxes in America, even though you don't live here anymore. So they become expatriates of America. Okay. My sister-in-law's brother was a musician, lived in France 42 years of his life. Mother got sick, came back here, and because he was considered an expatriate, they didn't let him back into America to bury his mother.
He basically would denounce his citizenship.
Right. And that's how they look at it. So once you denounce it, even if you didn't denounce it, but you haven't been back in 42 years, you're not coming into this country. So we have to look at that differently. And so we've been gaslighted.
What?
And as we wake up to that, we don't stand for the gaslighting anymore. We're questioning what these Black people are saying. And these Black politicians get angry. Jasmine Crockett, I was just watching a little TikTok video where she was, she called Byron Daniels all kinds of crazy stuff because he was married to a white woman. Okay. So she's saying he must not know his history and the Jim Crow laws and all that kind of stuff. But she never heard what Mr. Daniels, said.
Let me
Go
ask
ahead.
you a question because I had a conversation with someone I'm very close to about that. We talk and we talk even about the history of
What is social
why.
capitalism? You'll have to tell me what that is.
Okay, we even talk about the history of John Brown and people not really understanding who John Brown was, and
Hmm.
we were talking about the Byron Donalds thing, and I was like, what's amazing about Jasmine Crockett going there. I mean, you can attack Byron Donalds for anything you want, but going there from her perspective is you hate or disagree with this man so much that you're attacking his family. Okay.
No,
But
she doesn't disagree with him because she doesn't know what he speaks on.
mm,
Her whole conversation was that what he basically said is that he had done some research. And I'm sorry for cutting you off, but he
go
had done
ahead.
some research. And in doing that research, he found that um, during the Jim Crow laws, the circumstances forced Black men who could successfully have a family be in the home. A two-parent home was what allowed us to be successful as a family. Okay. It strengthened the family ties. Now, it is no different than the Italians that came here. They came here ragtag. Okay. And they had to rebuild the Italian family when they got here.
And they were not considered white.
Correct. They were not considered white at all, nor were the Cubans that came here, nor were even the white people that came from England here. And the Irish definitely weren't considered white. So if you don't know white history, you cannot speak on it. And at the time that they came to America, there was a group of people in America who felt it was their place to determine how they're going to label and process people in. Even the white Jews were not considered white.
Yeah. And most of that I learned when I was younger. We living so close to Ellis Island and being there numerous occasions where they literally, it's an open secret. It's not like you can find out how you had to be enrolled
Mm-hmm.
into those archives, and
Mm-hmm.
how a lot of people had to change their name
Mm-hmm.
because they wanted to assimilate and basically cosplay as people names that were already here,
Mm-hmm.
and changing different letters in their name,
Mm-hmm.
because letters names we all know have a
Frequency and
ethnic.
vibrates
Yeah,
to an
yeah,
energy. Yeah.
yeah. So let me ask you, back to the Jasmine Crockett thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is I was shocked because she was the same one who was pushing Kamala Harris. And it's
Yes.
like, did you realize who Kamala Harris's husband is? Like, and she's getting killed for it, and rightfully so, because I think that really when you look at her, is that she is becoming, for some people, a national star
No,
with
she's a tool. She's a tool for the Democratic Party. No, come on now. Let's be realistic. Kamala was the tool. They got no relief from her. AOC, who has a white boyfriend, I mean white, like from England, basically, they got no relief from her. The Democratic Party is good. The Dixiecrats are good at using you and have you believe you're doing something to help them. She will get no relief. As a matter of fact, there are three other people, and I've been watching the politics in Texas, who are looking to run against her. And the people in her district can't wait for that to happen. That's the sad part. And she's not, what happened to Kamala when she didn't win? What do you hear about her? Little to nothing.
Well, one of my biggest things, Sister Azima, in reference to um, what you said about the Democratic Party and how they use particularly women of color, and I hate to use that phrase,
But they use everybody.
how,
That's the whole point.
how they use them, and they, all tools will be broken, as we would
Hmm.
say.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's amazing how they tap into what I would consider the activism aspect instead of the legislative aspect. And what I mean by that is, if I was in Jasmine Crockett's district in Texas, I don't want you to be an activist. I don't want you to be loud, extra sound bites, doing all this stuff. I want you to do why I voted for you, is to get bills passed and work across the aisle to get some things done for me. And to me, it's like she's blowing hot air.
She is. She's like Cori Bush. Cori Bush came out of St. Louis.
And they're so, are they the same or are they different? Let me ask you, because those are, and I'm gonna tell you, Sister Azima, you got to take the L for this one, because they
Okay.
from your area, both of them.
Oh, I know. I know. Believe me, I know. But oh no, well, wait a minute. I got more. Maxine Waters is from my area.
Oh, oh,
Yeah, I got it.
you
We
got the
got it. We got the
trifecta.
trifecta. We got the trifecta. The three black women that talk
Oh,
nothing but hot air.
oh my goodness.
Trifecta. So Miss Cori Bush did her stuff. She didn't get reelected. She was replaced by Wesley Bell. Okay. I don't know what he's doing. It's very hard to find out what he's doing. But the only thing I really see that black people do once they get into the politics is that they do nothing to change the circumstances. Okay. I'm going to back up. When Mike Brown was murdered, and all these folks came down here to help us, we got the Boys and Girls Club of America. We got a new Urban League building. We got some stuff from the NAACP. Boys and Girls Club's been here 10 years, ain't been open. The Urban League building, I called up there to get something done. And the only reason why they did it for me is because I have political connection. But it's not open to the general public. Really? See, that's what irritates me. Is that we have a lot of black folks that get into the Democratic Party because it's so easy. You have to be a Republican representative, you have to earn it. To be a Democratic person, it's social. You get enough social people behind you, they'll push you to the core, but they're going to want something in exchange. So now Cori Bush is facing a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
Hung up
her
in the
husband's under investigation, and
Yes, and they're looking at her because there was money issued to her, and then she can't explain where it went.
because I will tell you, and in this I will share with you my thoughts on Cori Bush have really changed. I, like others from the outside, you saw her rise, and I saw like, okay, I thought she was somebody who was speaking truth to power, and you realize how pivotal what happened to Mike Brown and everything that happened in your area, your backyard,
My backyard.
and how it basically
Hmm.
transformed the new direction of this Democratic Party
Hmm.
and how they started tapping into black trauma. A little bit different than prior.
Hmm.
But that was the pinnacle moment where they said, okay, we're going to go in overdrive on this racial element and attack black Americans with their trauma and use our trauma as talking points, profitable for the gatekeepers.
You
And
know,
go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, I hear what you're saying, and it really hurts me because Black Lives Matter was grassroots. It was never started by George Soros. Those three black women had Jewish fathers, and all three of them are members of the LBGT. And I'm so sorry, LBGT people, because the LBG, but the rest of that, they were members of that. So they had already studied Maoism and everything. They had gone to the classes that George Soros had, and they were learning all about Marxism. And so their role was to get in front of the grassroots movement by saying this, that, and the other. All of this stuff that they were saying, they got just under 100 million. What was it? No, almost $1 billion. And it never went to the 318 different chapters that we fought so hard to bring on board across the United States of America. None of us got any of that money. So I get angry when I hear about BLM because it was grassroots from us right here. Me and my family had a role in that process. And we weren't out here looking for money. We were looking for just this. And to put those new laws into effect across America. The Dixiecrats played up on that trauma and allowed the executive order of the United States AID people to give George Soros $10 billion in which he used to say, I run Black Lives Matter. And he didn't. And the irony of it is what most people don't realize. We had the gatekeepers here, an all-white organization that marched alongside of us to make sure the police did not shoot us dead as we were marching.
And if you
We
want to do
had,
some history, you guys, Google who the gatekeepers are. And we're not talking about the gatekeepers in the black community. Just Google the organization of gatekeepers and who
we
Sister
had
Azima is speaking about.
right,
Let me
we
let
had
me let me
ex-Marines.
ask you, because we most people, like I said, from in this conversation,
Mhm.
we could talk for hours about this alone, because those on the outside, we saw how before his untimely demise, Darren Seals was like, yo,
Mm.
they're not the grassroots people. We are, and yourself and others,
Mhm.
and how that machine were able to shift the focus off of you guys who were real grassroots advocates,
Mhm.
seen the injustice prior to Mike Brown and what
Mhm.
was going on with the racial disparity, and still talk about Ferguson to this day of how it is, how they were able to take that camera away from you guys
Mhm.
and shift it to
Mhm.
their puppets
Mhm.
and empower the outside puppets and the forces of people that didn't have anything to do with anything, and basically still a movement, still a cause. And
Yeah, but we don't want a cause anymore. And that is why I'm happy with the fact that you all look at this differently. Okay. We've gone from being enslaved physically, shackled, to enslavement of our mind, to being used and perpetrated, set up on through the laws. Affirmative action was never meant to help us. It helped white women. Most people don't realize that. Go in there and read the affirmative action. It helped white women. Okay. We got, like everything, that 10%. But what it did was that it shifted a lot of Black people into believing that it was their place to be a Democrat and stand 10 toes deep in the Democratic Party, supposedly to help our people. But it didn't help them. What it did was that they allowed them to use you, to aggrandize you. I remembered when you could travel across the United States. If you left the deep South and got away from the radio stations in the deep South, you'd have to wait till you got kind of like Oklahoma, parts of Texas before you can pick up another Black radio station. And the Black radio stations would kind of talk to each other and play the same music we like to hear. Black stations are owned by Clear Channel. If you want to control the mindset of the most dominant people in the United States, even though they tell you you're the minority, what they don't tell you is that every time America would allow someone to come into America legally with their visa and all that, they labeled them white. It didn't matter if they came from Africa, the continent of Africa. It didn't matter what country they came to from the continent of Africa, they would be labeled white. I know I worked with a lot of them, and they would go like, I'm not Black, I'm white. I go, okay. And they would tell me, we're not allowed to be around you all. We're not allowed to talk to you. Because if we do, you would find out the truth and you would have an entirely different view. Okay. The civil rights movement allowed more Japanese and Asian people to come to America. And they used the civil rights to protect their rights for not being a white person. But the white people who came here, remember that they were fleeing England. They were criminals, the large majority of them. And then you had the religious sect that came here. And you trampled down the indigenous population that was here. You didn't discover America, it was already here in existence. But you brought with you smallpox and you killed the people out. That's the history. They're so worried about CRT, critical race theory. I laugh because if you don't know the history of critical race theory, please don't speak on it because it's not what they're talking about. I cannot teach you critical race theory. It is only for lawyers, people who are in the judiciary branch of government. Their role is to look at what we call Jim Crow laws, blue code laws, orange laws, these different laws in the southern states, and how some of those laws mitigated themselves to the northern states and came on the books, the law books. They go back in there and look at them to make sure they're not using them on people who are arrested in the early 2000s to now, so that they can keep them incarcerated. Okay. That's the purpose of the critical race theory. It has to be dealt with by the judiciary branch of government so they can go in and eradicate these laws, remove them totally, put them to rest, burn the books, whatever it takes. They don't want you to re-implement these laws. It's not something you can teach in a classroom. It's not like history.
I was shocked. I was shocked, to be honest with you, Sister Azima. I was so shocked when they started using that as a term that
But
I
see
was
that.
taken aback because I knew about Professor Bell and his theory and
Hmm.
where he, what, and even when he got pushback from a lot of black jurists
Right,
of because of what he was doing and how he even labeled it critical race theory.
right.
Um, and I think that sometimes when you look at law, for an example, most people may think that it just comes out of the blue.
No,
Why something is a law, but a law comes, it goes, and it doesn't eradicate. It just amends itself, or uh,
right.
most people think, oh, it's a law, it's gone. No, it never goes away. It's just an
No.
amendment to it.
It's just an amendment, right? And the mere fact that laws are enacted so that the ruling class can control you. If you practice any aspect of the Hermetic principles, the seven principles of life, these principles here, the seven principles of life, the Hermetic laws, the mere fact
I put them up
that,
there.
oh, okay, you're getting ready to put them up. Okay, the mere fact that the very first principle, remember I told you everything vibrates to a frequency?
Hmm.
Okay, when you are in a balanced state of mind or consciousness, these principles present themselves. They just automatically present themselves. The principle of mentalism. And you go like, what's that? Well, how about this? There are some of you out there who are planning on taking a trip, maybe for Mother's Day or a vacation somewhere. You're thinking about that now. That's your mentalism. And you're going to take that mentalism and you're going to activate your mind to the point that that becomes a reality for you. And you're going to walk through all these steps and you won't even realize it. You're going to talk to other family members corresponding. You're going to get your body all hyped up from within and without in order to get this done. You're going to vibrate because you're happy, you're saving your money, you're buying your clothes, you're doing all these things. Okay. You're going to watch stuff that deals, you may watch some movies or some little commercials about going to a particular place and what it's all about and do your research. Then you're going to polarize yourself. Those family members that can go, go. Those that can't go, they don't go. Okay. Those that are able to go, you are going to say, well, we're not worried about, we're not taking Mary Ann this time. Look here. We're gonna take her two kids. We're gonna all pull some money together and get them kids out of there because she need a break from them kids and them kids need a break from her. And you'll be bringing those children. You're polarizing that. Then the next thing you're gonna do is find the rhythm to get it done. You're gonna work a little overtime here. You're gonna go talk to somebody over there. Can grandma give us a little money over here? Can Uncle so and so get some money? Whatever it takes, and you're gonna get it all together. Then when you get it all together, you're going to look at the cause and effect. There's this give and take. If you have an accident and it's not yours, the effect is that someone's going to have to pay to fix it. But if you caused it, you're the one that's going to have to pay to fix it. If you're on this trip, you got to figure out, well, we're going to have to be sure that we got everything for the extra two people we're bringing. Do we have food and clothing and extra money for them? Are they going to be able to play with my kids? Are they close in age to them? How is this going to affect whatever? And you figure all of that out. Then you manifest it. Okay. The principle of genders. There's only two genders, masculine energy and feminine energy. And when you bring them together, they bring manifestation about. That's how people are born. That's how ideas and concepts come to be. But you follow all of these principles. When you follow those principles, they become the ideas of moral, they become the seven ideals and moral principles of Ma'at. And Ma'at is just this, just justice, just this. And what are those principles? Truth, justice, harmony, balance, order, reciprocity, and propensity. Why? Because when you live your life like that, it allows you to be balanced and people see you as that. They see you as a safe harbor to come to. And so that's what the church was supposed to do. The church was trying to be the seven principles of Ma'at. The church was supposed to be the seven hermetic principles. That's why you had the minister. That's why you go to him. And the Catholic Church, the Cathars didn't believe in Christianity. They believed in what you considered as paganism, because the first popes were women, because they were the ones that understood what it was like to give birth, to manifest something into existence. They weren't about war and just capitalism. They were about manifesting and emoting love, peace, harmony, justice. That doesn't make you weak. A peaceful man is a peaceful man. Piss him off and see if he won't hurt you. Okay? Everybody has their breaking point. But we don't have to walk around with our chest out and being all big and bold. We don't have to. But this is what we're seeing happening to the Black people who run to the Democratic Party, because they don't have to come up with a lot of money. The party has built into it the ability to manipulate and use people. And they get angry with you, us, people of color, the BIPOCs, okay? Black, indigenous, and people of color of America. They get angry with you when you do not see it their way. Their way. Because
they definitely get upset. They definitely get upset and angry if you don't conform to what they say.
Right. And that's because they know the pressure is on them. The pressure was on them to make sure we buckled, because I'm telling you, when Trump, remember, Hillary was running against Bernie Sanders, and they asked Trump to come in and pull votes from her so that Bernie would win. What happened when Trump came in? Bernie died, and nobody voted for Hillary. All of those Black women in Ohio and Pennsylvania, and even in your state, New Jersey, when Hillary came there to speak, the air was hostile towards her. Those Black women said, "Oh, no, we're not voting for you. You're a dictator." And they told her that. And she got so angry, she made the news media stop recording her when she went out to speak in the Black community, because the Black women told her, "We're not voting for you. You're dangerous. You don't have any real reason to do anything to help us." So these Black folks, even the Black man who's running against Miss Crockett in Texas, when you hear him talk, he does have great ideas. But when someone asked him, "What do you think about Trump and the things that he's doing with Doge?" he opened his mouth like the typical Democrat and hated Donald Trump. To me, that's insane. It's insanity. Not even my brother, who's a retired politician and a Democrat, when I asked him, "What are y'all going to do about X, Y, and Z?" All this stuff is coming out of the woodwork. It's coming out of the woodwork. You had 2 million dead people, and you took their Social Security number and gave it to those folks who came across the border illegally. So that meant that my retirement money that I put in there, because that money comes out of your check and your employer matches what comes out of your check, was put into a trust fund, and the trust fund earns interest. So the interest money that is earned, you didn't give me a cost of living raise for 6 years. The 6 years that Obama was in office, we didn't get a cost of living raise.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me ask you about that.
Okay.
Because you are of the age where Social Security, and I would say that you're in the demographic that they're trying to incite. We're saying, "Oh, they're going to take your Social Security away."
No, not incite us. It's the stuff that they are doing. Many of us who go into the hospitals, they put do not resuscitate orders on you. They don't have the staff to come in and check on you properly. I know because I'm talking to a lot of them who are in the hospital, whose family members are calling me, and I'm telling them, you go there, advocate for your family, become their power of medical attorney, do X, Y, and Z, and they go and do those things, and their families get better, and then they have to go and fight for them to have food given to them. You'll be surprised. The what people realize is that you have to go and read Agenda 21. In Agenda 21, under the New World Order, and don't let them talk this crap about Project 2025. It's Agenda 21. It's been around 21 years. That agenda, all the way back to Henry Kissinger, is about reducing the population to a manageable number of people. 1/2 billion, 500 million people for the whole world.
Let me ask you about.
Will do that.
Let me ask you about Doge before we take some
Department of
questions.
Government Efficiency.
Yeah,
Yes.
before we take some questions and then we close out. I want to ask you about Doge and Donald Trump. Do you think his first presidency, like you said, it was some forces that I don't think that he understood around that was intent on destroying him? Do you think that he learned the first time around, I need to attack this where this money's at? Like this has become, out of all the executive orders he signed, which for the most part, if somebody looks at them, they've been good. Out of the tariffs, out of all the stuff, why do you think him going after this money with Doge and the basically the funneling of our money for other people's pockets? Why do you think that is like the key thing that he's focused on and they're so upset about?
Because when President Eisenhower signed the agreement after the war, he had his State of the Union address, and somewhere near the end of his speech, he said, I apologize to all Americans for signing you up into the military industrial complex. If politicians can, please return it into the hands of the people. He felt bad about that. He thought it was a good idea in the beginning. He felt bad. When Kennedy came along and saw the exact same thing, where this group was given autonomous power without having to be audited and with no oversight, he was killed. Not just him, but his brother as well. Okay? Then you came along with Gerald Ford, and he spoke on some things, and well, you got rid of Nixon because he found out about child trafficking. And then you got rid of Ford because you Squeaky Fromm stabbed him. He survived. Then you had Ronald Reagan that was attacked. So it's not like it was just Trump. There were many politicians who paid their way. They didn't get funding from the money bags. And they felt it was their place to speak out. And the minute they spoke out, things happened to them. Okay. And they realized Black people were getting restless, so they threw us a bone. And what was the bone? Obama. Now, I don't know any senator who becomes president. A senator's term is 6 years. In the Senate, he wasn't there 6 years.
A junior senator at that.
Huh?
A junior senator at that.
Right. And so he's a junior senator. I think he was there 4 years, and he became president. How does that smell? Doesn't smell good to me. Do you also remember that he kind of half, somebody said, well, um, President Obama, if you could do this again, he said, well, I wouldn't want to be right in front of the camera, but if I could, I'd like to be behind the scenes and run America another 4 years. How do you think we got Biden? The laws that you see, the executive orders that Trump is enacting, he is not doing this by himself. He has a military group of people around him who are very strategic. They're telling him because those military groups of people saw that if Hillary had gotten in, this would be a dictatorship. It would have been a dictatorship. And I don't think you all understand that. Idi Amin was a dictator. Read about him. Okay? Read about the guy from Belgium. The stuff that he did. He was a dictator. Look at China.
So let me ask you, do you think if Hillary would have won Hillary, a lot of people may think that Hillary's, if she would have won, her presidency would have been a lot like her husband's. Do you
No,
think? Okay.
no,
Yeah.
not at all. He's scared to death of her. Everybody laughs at that, but she is ruthless. He had black children, and she made damn sure he never did anything else with those children. And she made doggone sure that he followed her rules. Nancy Pelosi comes from a mafia family. Hillary came from a family where they were that was deep rooted in the CIA.
And she was a Goldwater girl.
Yes, she was. And Biden was stupid, but he supported all those backwoods white politicians down south, especially, Goldwater and all of them. He just loved all of them. That man never did anything. He never protested. He never worked. He never did any of that. The red flag for me was when his oldest son died from brain tumor. And his youngest son, Hunter, divorced his wife and moved in with his sister-in-law. And unquestionable things were going on with his niece and Hunter. And what did Joe Biden and Jill say?
We support him.
And I don't think people realize Jill was the nanny when Biden's first wife died.
Mysteriously.
And if you look at that, and he's at the hospital, he's demanding the news people to come in and videotape him accepting his acceptance speech for being the senator out of Delaware. His wife is laying on the gurney and his other daughter's on the gurney. They're both dead, but he's standing there. This is my family. They're here to support me. What kind of crazy mess is that? It's in front of your face, but you choose not to see. But when
In
you
plain sight.
see it, you're like, oh, no, no.
Yes,
So
psycho.
Miss Crockett is a tool. And I'm sorry, we need to go. Miss Crockett is a tool. And that's what you have to look at. She's a tool like Joy Reid. Once she's used up, they don't have any need for her.
Wow. Well, you guys in the chat, Sister Azima has came back after a month of us not being able to do shows. Sister Azima has came in with the will kick, and she has kicked the door down tonight. And we look forward to continuing our conversation every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, and hopefully we won't miss any weeks going forward. Sister Azima, in reference to the herbalist, do you want to give anybody your email and tell them how they can get in touch with you?
Sure. You can email me at Sebdet, SEPDET, 777 at gmail.com, or you can text me at 314-243-8911.
Oh, I just want to tell you, Sister Azima, I really, really appreciated this conversation.
Well, I hope everybody
Hopefully,
else did.
hopefully, a month away don't make you so. You were a little fiery tonight.
I have been, listen, there was everybody, the last time I couldn't get on here, I was in the middle of a tornado. The state of Missouri had 10 major tornadoes, four of them were in my area. And so power was down, trees looked like somebody dropped boulders on them from the top. They were just compacted to the ground, top down. And I live in a senior citizens community. And let me tell you, our building was empty because children came over and got their parents and took them out because we don't really have a basement in where I'm staying. And so a lot of parents came and got their parents, took them somewhere. And then when we come back, you can see there were no street lights. We had no street lights. There's a lot of stuff that was going on, even though we had power in our building because it has its own personal generator. There were no street lights. It was pitch black over here. And then for some reason, the alarms kept going off all night into the morning, but the tornadoes had already passed. And the thing was that they were very fast moving. And so, I had all that energy pent up. I was like, I gotta talk.
And you guys in the chat, until next week, I need you to ask. I'm gonna ask you guys in the chat a question. Are we gonna hold? And I want everybody in the chat to tell us next week. Right, if you guys join us, are we gonna hold Sister Azima accountable from her two daughters, Corey Bush and Jasmine Crockett,
Throw
being from
Maxine
St.
in
Louis?
there too. Maxine's in my family.
Oh yeah,
Lord.
oh yeah. She has the trifecta. All three of these: Maxine Waters, Corey Bush, Jasmine Crockett. They're all three from St. Louis, you guys. And is Sister Azima? Do she got to take the L for this?
Oh, I'm taking it. I'm not gonna let you all take it. Don't take nothing off of them women. Nothing. Right now, Corey Bush is trying to save her life. She's in court, literally in court right now.
Yeah, Rodney. LOL, right? They all three of them from St. Louis. What's in the water out there?
She's crazy. And I don't know what's going on with Maxine, but they're looking at her. But we do know that Miss Crockett is going to be censured.
Yeah.
In Congress.
Yeah, it's coming.
Okay. And then, of course, she has assault charges have been filed against her.
Until next week, you guys.
Until next week, you all.
Appreciate you guys in the chat.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Take care. Have a good night. That was good.